Hi, this is Reinhard from Everyday Systems. Well, it's been another pandemic year, and beyond the depressing news, it's been a personally difficult year for me and my family, as I'm sure it has for many of you. But on the bright side, it's been another fantastic opportunity to test the true mettle of Everyday Systems. At the end of 2020, with just hours to spare, I put out a State of the Systems podcast, a quick check-in on the state of my thinking and personal practice of 14 of the habit systems I've developed over the years. I hadn't done such a thing since 2016, but 2020 seemed to demand it. And so, alas, does 2021. So here I am again, though a couple weeks late this time. Despite, or maybe because of the world going crazy, I somehow managed to devote more time to experimenting with and thinking about my habits and everyday systems in 2021 than I have in many years. I put out 7 podcast episodes covering 6 new, or at least previously undescribed, systems. A pretty heroic output by my standards, at least, for the last decade or so. I'm hoping to be able to keep up a cadence of 1 new episode a month, as I have for the last few months for all of 2022. But, as you know, loose lips sink ships, so pretend you didn't hear that. I'll stick with the organizational system I used last year in my review, dividing the systems into 3 categories: body, soul, and spirits. As you'll see during my review, I use this division, the tripartite self, a riff on Plato, in a bunch of the systems themselves. I'm finding it like N and S days, or 14 minutes of schedulistically insignificant time, to be a useful, reusable system-building substructure. I'll also add a 4th category for meta systems, systems for managing systems. I should warn you that some of the systems have shifted around a bit in terms of where they fall, so brace yourselves. I just counted, and it looks like I'm going to check in on about 17 total systems. That sounds like a lot, but consider that even the flagship system, the No S diet, is just 14 words. Brevity is the body, spirit, and soul of everyday systems. That being said, it's still a little too much to fit into a single episode. So today I'll cover body and spirit systems, next episode, soul and meta. Before I dive into individual systems, here's a quick lay of the land so you know what you're getting into over these next 2 episodes. There are 4 body systems: the No S diet, Shovelglove, Urban Ranger, and Lawful Good Biker. Last year, I classified Lawful Good Biker as a soul system, but I think it makes more sense in body. Also, soul is getting really crowded. 2 spirit systems: glass ceiling and low smoking. 7 soul systems: Audiodidact, Demogorgon versus Asmodeus, G-Ray Vision, The Study Habit, Timebox Lord, VC Cat, and Weekend Luddite. Finally, the 4 meta-systems, systems for tracking and managing other systems: the life log, loose lips sink ships, mantrification, and personal punch cards. Starting with the body systems, in rough chronological order of invention. The No S diet. No snacks, no sweets, no seconds, except sometimes on days that start with S. This is my original everyday system, revealed to the world in 2002, and one I have very little personal trouble with over 20 years into it. My habits are really strong. I'm not even tempted by anything except once in a while the temptation of taking a dubious S day. If it's clear it's an N day and an S is being dangled in front of me, I'm like John the Baptist. I don't even have to exert willpower. And the results, my weight, have been very stable as well. I'm still down, on average, those initial 40 pounds I lost. I'm not saying this to brag. It would be ridiculous for a diet guru to brag about being able to stick with his own system. That should be a given. I'm saying it to maybe encourage those of you who are still at the pre-habit stage that the day may come when you don't obsess about it anymore. I know I was surprised when I first noticed this. I was also surprised that my fretful mind went right on to obsessing about other things, that solving the problem of diet and exercise with Shovelglove didn't solve all my problems, as I'd sort of naively hoped they might, back when they seemed impossible to solve. That part is maybe less encouraging. You're still going to have problems even when you stop overeating. But I mention it as a powerful illustration that it really is possible to get over this particular set of problems with such resounding thoroughness that they no longer even seem like problems anymore, and you start to forget that they ever were problems. And this is the downside. You then move on to other problems. As I mentioned in my last State of the Systems, in the context of Urban Ranger, I've been using a Fitbit step tracker for several years now. This year, I also got a Fitbit scale, and I have to say I like it. By making it just ever so slightly easier to track weight, it makes it happen more regularly. And though it saves me maybe just seconds every morning versus manually recording, every second on a scrambly weekday morning when you're fighting with the kids over who gets the bathroom first is precious. More importantly, it makes it ever so slightly easier to focus on the big picture in terms of weight, on the moving average rather than any individual measurement, because the app auto-generates and prominently places a moving average trend chart. I've always been pretty good about focusing on the big picture in terms of weight. I didn't weigh regularly for my first 2 years on the no-S diet and was perfectly happy and successful not weighing. But I think for those of you, and I know there are many, who have the tendency to get flustered by an unexpected individual number on the scale, a device like this can be helpful. I hate to admit it, being a weekend Luddite and all, but technology can sometimes be good. There's a story that Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers, weighed exactly 153 pounds for his entire adult life. He was an avid swimmer, and he weighed himself every day before doing laps. And every time he weighed himself, he saw the same number, 153. Not a pound more or less. A fact he loved, not because this skinny, saintly man was worried about his BMI, but because those 3 digits were the number of letters in each of his favorite words, in each of the words of his favorite phrase, I love you. I believe this because the man was so clearly a saint, and miraculous signs are to be expected in such cases. Mere mortals, however, should expect some fluctuation in their weight, however perfectly they are adhering to no-S or any other diet. I personally see big fluctuations. I gain and lose several pounds every week, sometimes in a single day. I mention this not because it troubles me, but because I'm hoping I can reassure some of you who see similar fluctuations and are stressing about them. I highly recommend, if you are given to fretting about the number on the scale, that you only permit yourself to fret about the moving average. As long as that number is stable or moving in the right direction, you're golden. Fitbit and many other apps today and devices, including good old Excel and Google Sheets, make this very easy. I did an experiment this year with limited food logging, partially because I was curious what it's like, since I know so many people do it, partially because I was curious as to whether the act of logging itself would have any impact on my own behavior. I've been on a fermented food kick, and I thought it might be a good way to nudge me to eat more sauerkraut, kefir, kimchi, and whatnot. I called what I did BLD logging, as in breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I didn't count calories or anything, just the names of the food I ate, and those pretty laconically. 2 hard-boiled eggs, oatmeal, etc. Food logging with good no-S behavior is easier than normal food logging because you have less input opportunities to log, and the B, L, and D prompts are reminders to try to eat in a meal-oriented way. I'd record my BLD entries and anything in between on the back of my daily personal punch cards, and then transfer everything to my LifeLog spreadsheet at the end of the week. One column for each letter, with rarely used columns in between for intermeal snacking. S foods would be bolded and get a star. Borderline foods and behaviors would be bolded and get a tilde. And a combination of the number of stars and tildes and eating events would give me a crude intake score for the day, 3 being the goal for an end day. Everything was worth 1 point except a tilde, which was half. Each meal, each S, each funny stuff. Ultimately, after 11 months, I decided BLD logging was too much work, even if it did possibly improve my dietary choices in some small way. I mention it here because 1, I want to assure any food loggers among you that now, from experience, I feel your pain. 2, BLD logging is a simpler mechanism than other food logging mechanisms I'm aware of, and fits well with no-S. So if you are an OSer looking to do food logging, perhaps as a temporary measure, it could be a good approach. And 3, though inactive for me now, I will keep it in my arsenal as a backup option, as a potential negative tracking tool, basically using the threat of breaking it out again as incentive to behave well enough that I won't feel the need to, say, if my moving average weight were to climb above some threshold. I'm considering an even simpler form of food logging, which is basically just counting S events and funny stuff. Instead of writing down individual foods, which is too much work, I'll just mark on my daily punch card how many S's and borderline behaviors I indulged in, maybe marking an S event, snack, sweet, or second, with an asterisk on my daily punch card in the no S box, and a borderline behavior, virtual plating, excessive tasting while cooking, etc., with a tilde, and then adding it all up and scoring it in a weekly life logging session. But I haven't started doing this, and I'm not sure I will. On to Shovelglove, my second oldest system. I ran into some difficulty with Shovelglove for the first time in October 2021. In almost 20 years of Shovelglove, I've never had to take more than a day or 2 off for soreness or discomfort. And then, whether it was because I decided it was a good idea to drag 5 air conditioners to the basement in one day, or because, as my personal trainer brother suspects, I developed some kind of RSI from swiping and mousing all day long in my day job, or from hubris, from having just bragged on Facebook about how I'd never gotten a Shovelglove relevant injury before, or because I'm just getting old. Whatever it was, I started feeling a sensitivity in my right arm, a pain by my inner elbow when doing certain kinds of movements. From extensive YouTube self-diagnostics, I'm fairly confident this is golfer's elbow. And it didn't affect just Shovelglove, but all kinds of lifting movements. Holding my beloved heavy cast iron pans, tossing my son around. I wound up taking over a month completely off Shovelglove, which I'd never done before, and even that wasn't enough to make the discomfort totally go away. I started up again, but with a lighter hammer for some moves, dropping one move entirely, arm wrestle, doing few reps, and holding the hammer very close to the head with my right arm, and doing the movements in slow motion. I also made some other lifestyle changes. I got a vertical mouse, an ergonomic keyboard in case the underlying cause is some kind of work-related RSI thing. I cobbled together a standing desk for myself, and I'm consciously using my uninjured left hand more with my phone and for other tasks. So as a bonus from this injury, I'm becoming a little ambidextrous. I'm almost entirely laying off pull-ups. It's getting better, but golfer's elbow, from what I've read, can take months to heal, and over 3 months in, I'm still far from 100%. One of the tricky things with an injury like this is you never really know what caused it. So it's difficult to know even what you're responding to, much less how to respond to it. There's often a trigger event, for me, carrying all those air conditioners, but there's also usually an underlying repeated behavior that weakens you to the point that the trigger, the straw that breaks the camel's back, can push you over the edge. My brother suspects some kind of computer-related RSI, but I can't be certain, and I can't help but fear it's Shovelglove itself, or some Shovelglove move or moves. After a fair amount of trial and painful error, I settled in to an incredibly slow ramp-up of 1 extra rep per movement, starting from 1 rep per movement, using a 6-pound hammer I got for my children, instead of my usual 20-pounder for most movements, holding the hammer very close to the head with my injured arm and doing the movements almost in slow motion. The restraint is harder than the exercise, but this seems to be working. I'm up to 7 reps per movement again and haven't had to backtrack in several weeks. Throughout, I've tried to keep the time sacred, that block in the morning devoted to Shovelglove, when I couldn't swing the hammer at all, or to round out my reduced rep count routine, I've been doing stretches, cross-fiber friction massage, more squats. Many, many times over these months, my impatience has led me to try to ramp up again too quickly, and I felt a pang of discomfort, sometimes delayed, and then had to back off again. It's been frustrating, and there's a part of me that's scared I won't ever get back up to my former cruising altitude of 14 reps of 14 movements with a 20-pound hammer. In 2020, I had to give up running, which I really enjoyed due to repeated injuries. That I can live with, as long as I can keep urban rangering. But Shovelglove, I love too much. It's almost part of my identity. So I really hope this progress, however slow and fitful, continues. And I think it will, at this point. It's been getting better and better with this 1 extra rep per week, etc., ultra slow ramp up. I think as long as I can restrain my hubris and not rush ahead and re-injure myself, I'll be okay. Urban Ranger, my inspirational metaphor to walk as much as possible, is going strong. But I have a new challenge here too. Since November, I have a new job, which is fully remote permanently. Like many people, I did a work-from-home stint during the pandemic, but it was brief, and until now, I've always had a walking commute, which gave me a fair amount of steps built in automatically as part of my daily routine. I've had to be much more intentional about my walking since my office has moved to my basement. I make myself get out in the morning after the kids leave for a mini walk around the neighborhood, even if it's just 15 minutes. It's a great way to start the day. I take my voice recorder with me to get my thoughts together, audio didact. I take another walk at lunch, often combined with some errand. Even so, my Fitbit tells me it's less steps than I used to get, so I'm still figuring this out. If I'm under 10,000 steps by evening, I'll table walk, aka pace around the dining room table, a technique pioneered in our family by my oldest daughter, to make my minimum quota. Not ideal. It feels more than slightly ridiculous, and I vastly prefer outdoor walking, but provisionally better than breaking my streak. One nice thing about Urban Ranger during the pandemic is that I've gone on a lot more social walks. Often there wasn't a lot more one could do in terms of socializing. Restaurants and bars were closed, or outdoor seating was available, but it was too cold. People were rightfully antsy about meeting inside. A walk to catch up, even in brisk weather, was perfect. And my family got a little more adventurous about finding nice nature walks around here to take together. Lawful Good Biker, my Dungeons & Dragons inspired system for comically strict obedience to traffic rules when bicycling, didn't get as much play in 2020 when the street as in 2020 when the streets were more traffic free and we were biking all over the place. But I'm still mindful of it and shout it at my children whenever we're out biking together. I am often tempted to shout it out at other bikers as well, but I restrain myself. So much for body systems. On to spirits systems. And just to clarify, this is spirits as in strong drink. For spirits as in spiritual, you'll have to wait for soul systems. Glass ceiling, my main system in this category, and also one of my oldest overall, is still very much in effect. In 2021, I think it was 2021, maybe it was even 2020, I lowered my ceiling from a maximum of 2 drinks a day to 2 drinks just on S days and 0 on N days. Because even though I mostly stuck with it, the ceiling was becoming more or less equivalent to a floor. I'd have 2 drinks almost every day, and those 2 drinks were often generously sized. I started doing this, I still can't remember if it was 2020 or 2019, and I'm surprised to say I've been able to make this transition to a lower variable height glass ceiling. I thought it would be much harder. Non-alcoholic beers helped. I've been surprised at how less awful some brands are than I expected. Apparently the state-of-the-art has advanced considerably in recent years. Also kombucha, which is irritatingly trendy, but actually rather good and has a champagne-like quality, especially when poured into wine glasses. It also has a tiny amount of alcohol from the fermentation, which is psychosomatically powerful. It's on a par with non-alcoholic drinks, 0.5% or under. Most of all, I've been helped by the fact that I've so hammered the N and S day structure into myself with the No S diet and Shovelglove that I had something really solid to lean on. From what I read on the news, I may be the only person on the planet who has wound up drinking less over the course of the pandemic. But it's definitely not from inclination. If I didn't have a system like this, glass ceiling and now variable height glass ceiling, to lean on, I would have been in big trouble. Low smoking is my system for reducing smoking to next to, but not quite nothing, inspired by the scene in Goethe's Faust, where Faust traps the devil with a notched, slightly broken pentagram, so he can get in, but not out. And in deference to this famous literary incident, is symbolized by a no smoking sign with a little gap in it. Low smoking has also been going strong, though pandemic stresses have made it more challenging than it's been in a while. I can't say, as I could with glass ceiling, that I've actually improved in 2021. Part of the difficulty was that I had a partner in crime at my last job who, though I love him dearly, didn't make this system any easier. But there's no question it was a helpful limiting factor, and in 2022, with my new work-from-home job, should be structurally easier in terms of this kind of temptation, if lonelier. Well, that was a weird system to end on, a system I can't actually recommend to others, but do practice myself. But that's it for spirit systems, and for today, I must. Next episode, soul systems and meta systems. If you're thinking, that doesn't interest me, I just want to get thin and or ripped, well, they might help you even with that. Especially in the meta systems, there is some relevant stuff about tracking and managing and damage control for No-S and other systems that could be quite helpful, even for body-focused people. That's all for now. Part 2 very soon. Thanks for listening.